Do you know, I've got to say, coming in here, this is reflecting a more peaceful side to a contemporary artist who likes blowing things up and running things over. Am I right?
Well, actually, I think there's a secret violence in this room. Cornelia Parker is an amazing artist. She's conceptual, she's curious, she's experimental, and actually you can see her experimentation in these works as well, but there's also this secret hidden destruction that you get to see when you get up closer with both the works and the objects she's reproduced, but also the technique she uses. So you're right, she's a very sculptural artist and she has done huge works, she's exploded sheds, and actually one of my favorite memories is working at the Tate and seeing her work in 2022, where Andrea Schlieker, an amazing curator, worked with her, and she had this huge solo show with a lot of sculptural work. However, as a sculptor, she also likes the physicality of creating those works. So the big sculptural works are very masculine, the violence is just out there, you can see it. But in the smaller works, there's a more delicate process. And actually, the printmaking itself for a sculpture is a quite physical process. And she takes the objects, which again are sculptures, and she transforms the three-dimensional into the two-dimensional through this really interesting process where she works in collaboration as well. So
how exactly does she do it?
Going back to the process and talking about that violence, she doesn't use a camera, she uses light, and light becomes her weapon. In one of her interviews, I loved it, how she said it's ultraviolet light, not ultraviolet light.
I like it.
Because she actually uses the light, she puts the objects on this plate, I think it's a polymer or copper plate, and it has this light-sensitive patina on top. And again, that's where the collaborations comes in. She works with chemists, physicians, scientists, because she experiments. And the best process she loves and is inspired by is photogravure. So she puts those objects on this light-sensitive plate, and it takes 5 minutes for the acid to etch into the plate and create this beautiful effect. So even in the process itself, there's this violence because it's the acid eating in. But also, it's very important to think of the photogravure process because one of her biggest inspirations and muses and examples she's been looking up to is Fox Talbot.
Yes, a good local connection there. And in fact, you are to one side of an image that involves glassware that I think Fox Talbot was the first person to actually take a photograph of.
Yes, that's correct. So because she was so interested in processes, she always admired Fox Talbot for his invention of photogravure and sun prints. So she's always been inspired by him, knew his work, knew his processes. So in her experimentation, she asked the Bodleian in Oxford to go and see the original images, the original prints that Fox Talbot took, but also to use the objects the very own Fox Talbot had used in his works. So she went to the Bodleian and borrowed Fox Talbot's glassware, took it herself and reinvented it. And actually there's a really lovely link there because Fox Talbot was one of the first people experimenting with photography and photogravure, but he was also standing up to painters that would do still life. And in still life, there's always glassware. So there's always an object of glass. But Fox Talbot came along and said, actually, look, with my new process, I can do a whole row of glassware now. I don't have just one in a still life, I can do a whole shelf of it.
That was a good way, wasn't it, of an artist showing how talented they were, that they could actually reproduce something made of glass. Well, there is the image featuring glassware owned by Fox Talbot, and I think that's quite incredible. Now, you hinted at violence. We've talked about violence in the process, the acid, but not all the glassware she worked with got away unscathed, did it?
Absolutely. So in the process, obviously the printmaking process itself, but she's also in her process of destruction, she loves squishing, exploding, squashing, destroying, crushing objects in the process. She says she goes to antique markets and always looks at objects, and she always feels ashamed in a way because she knows she's looking at them for their squishability, because she knows.
The dealers must shudder.
Absolutely. She knows she's going to do something with them. But she said it's a way for her to experiment. It's a way for her to, you know, reflect the world as well. She's quite a political artist. She campaigns a lot, but she's not political in her work, although everything happening in the world instills her a sense of anxiety. So the work is almost like an outlet of all the things happening in the world. So this process is also a way of her personality reflecting the world's facts in her work.
And I suppose the excitement, the anxiety of never quite knowing how it's going to turn out.
Absolutely, that fragility and that being in limbo. That's why she likes things floating, because it could either be falling down or being uplifted. So you never know which way it's going to go, and there's this lovely tension. She also once said she loves drinking out of thin glass, and the thinner it is, the better it is, because there could be just any time break. So she loves that tension and that gravitational pull, and that, yeah.
The one other thing I'm very aware of, she loves shadows. I mean, whether it's the shadows created by her reconstituted, exploded shed,
yes,
or indeed some of the images here.
Absolutely, and that's again what I really love about her work, because she manages, I think it's a quite innovative process. So apart from obviously the early British 19th century photography pioneers like Fox Talbot, but also the very own John Herschel, which is in one of our other museums, they experimented with this process. But in terms of contemporary artists, using photogravure in a way she does is not really widely available. Most of photographers would use the camera. So what I really love about the shadows is that she fixes that object, but also its ethereal sort of shine around it onto a plate. So you can see the object itself, but everything else also becomes so ethereal and almost, you know, imaginative. It's almost like this object transcends and translude. And that's what I love in relation to #1 Royal Crescent, because I just think of the people that would use this glassware and they would sit at our dining table in our kitchen in the historic house and be using these objects. So I also imagine their stories being part of those shadows, because they were the people using those very objects, and she manages to capture the shadow, the story, the object itself, and make it become this three-dimensional piece. And I just love imagining the shadows created back in the days. And actually, when you come to our exhibition, we will also have a little playful feature for children with plastic glassware, not actual glassware, where they're able to shine their own shadows. And I just really like this playfulness of, you know, in making shadows become, you know, there forever.
Yeah, fixing the shadow.
Fixing them,
it's quite funny. You're talking about shadows and children. I'm thinking of Peter Pan and his search for his shadow that he lost.
Yes.
But that's me. It's probably the wet getting into my brain. You're fantastic. That's a great explanation. The other point we've got to make is Cornelia may have gone to the Bodleian to collect her glass, but a lot of other glass that's here today is local to Bath, isn't it? I mean, you've been around collecting your own items.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what we always try and do with our exhibitions here as well. The link of the historic, so obviously the historic element of our house at #1 Royal Crescent, with a contemporary lens, but also always linking it somehow to locality. And obviously Georgian glassware was very important. There's very many skilled makers that used to make glass back in the days and still do in Bath. So we want to also celebrate the craftsmanship and the uniqueness of each item in historic Georgian glassware. So we have used objects from our very own collection, but we're very lucky to have such a supportive network of other museums. So we were able to go to the Holborn, thank you, Chris, and to the Victoria Art Gallery, thank you, Rob, and just they opened their storage to us, and we were able to make sure that the historic glasses that we have in this show match the objects that we can see in Cornelia Parker's work, but also, you know, create this lovely link of, you know, collaboration in Bath itself.
That's absolutely terrific. So from tomorrow, people can come and enjoy and experience all of this, but be very careful. Look where you're going. There's a lot of very valuable glassware that isn't photographed and on the wall. Thank you.
Exactly. Handle with care. Thank you.